Welcome, everyone. Very happy to be here today talking to my old friend, Brian Haynes, a recent acquisition of Kahua. Brian, we're so happy that you're part of our team now. You've spent a career focused on the best use of and care for operational assets. Tell us a little bit about your professional journey.
Well, thanks, Nicholas. It's funny. I was just thinking because I kind of figured you were going to ask that question, and I was thinking about my journey, and I've known you sort of for half of it, which is kind of
Yeah.
to think about, more than 20 years. So, it's an interesting journey. Sometimes we tend to tell things about, from the perspective of the most current and kind of go backwards until we don't think it matters anymore. I think for my journey in asset management, it's got to start at the beginning because that's sort of a profound start for me.
And yours is very different from most asset managers' beginning.
Yeah, talk about, I'll just introduce that it was probably in one of the most complex physical plants that you could ever imagine. I began my career in U.S. nuclear submarines as a maintenance technician, and I realized very quickly the value of really good assets and asset maintenance, from two perspectives. One is so that we could complete our missions that were assigned to us, which is always really important. And number two was because it was such an intense environment, asset health from the ship all the way down to the individual pieces of equipment, really equated to keeping us alive in a very
Yeah.
hostile environment. And I don't mean hostile necessarily from enemies. I'm talking about you're in the water, under the ocean, in a nuclear power plant, in a steel tube with a lot of other people
There
and a
are
lot of
operational
things.
assets there that if you don't maintain, you don't live.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and after that, I got out of the Navy and I was fascinated by buildings. I've always been fascinated by buildings. And I decided I wanted to become an architect. So I went to university. I got a degree in architecture, but during that time, I got hired by the Office of Space Planning and Management at the University of Arizona. And oddly, I had taken a night school class right after I got out of the Navy on a new product that no one had really heard that much about. It was about 1990 and it was AutoCAD. And
How about
AutoCAD
that?
was about ready to revolutionize the way we draw. And I learned really early from a great teacher how to be really good at AutoCAD, which made me quite marketable during those days because not a lot of people knew what it was, but they saw the value. So during the time I'm getting my architecture degree, I'm working in facilities management at the university doing space and occupancy planning, really applying technology because I was a maintenance technician. I was kind of a technical guy too, but, probably dangerously technical, as I like to say. But it enabled me to, I ended up becoming the IT manager for my department and building a database system and really, really probably one of the first people on the web. Oddly, I know that sounds funny. I was telling this story at the Global Asset Leadership Network conference last week that in 1993, the computer center asked me if I would install this product called TCP/IP for DOS. DOS, remember DOS? And basically it was to get, to help me get on the internet at the university and put everyone in my department on the internet. And guess what? When you got there, there wasn't anybody else there yet. So it was kind of a fun time until Netscape came out, and then, Netscape revolutionized, and then the dot-com era happened. Well, during the dot-com era, I went to a dot-com company because the architecture firm I was working for funded an internet startup. They got acquired. It was really a fast time and having a great time. I really met a lot of people during that journey, Nicholas, including, leading up to the time I met you. I was recruited by an ex-colleague to come to Autodesk. And I went to Autodesk for a number of years. I was doing industry marketing and product marketing for a number of startup businesses and primarily focused on FM and operations, facility operations. I left that in 2012 and joined a company called FM Systems, which is a global leader in integrated workplace management solutions. I got involved at this point in my career because I was getting more senior in a number of national committees, including National Institute of Building Science, where I helped help the management of the development of the COBE format. So the construction operation building information exchange format that is used a lot across a lot of federal products and a lot of projects and a lot of others. And I'd really, at that point I was loving technology, but I kind of fell in love with this whole idea of asset lifecycle. The way we thought about it before, and this, is that you've got construction and construction's over here, and then you've got operations and operations over there. And I ended up staying with FM Systems for about 14 years. The last two, we got acquired by Johnson Controls. And man, did I take a deep dive in building control systems. And it was really at the beginning of when AI was really, really taking off. And so that led up to this January, me joining Kahua. that was my journey.
So, Brian, how does a lifer in asset management find their way to capital project management software company? Did you feel like you were traveling to a foreign land?
No, I felt like I was dry. All right, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here. I felt like I was driving into an area where I spent a lot of my career frustrated, and that
Mm,
is between construction and operations. Listen, this journey began for me when I was at the University of Arizona. I was in facilities and space and occupancy planning. We got information about a building weeks, if not months, after it opened. I remember an aerospace engineering building that got built, and we weren't even invited in during construction. And when the building got turned over, we went over the room. The way the rooms were numbered didn't match our standards. We had to literally pry all of the plastic plates off the wall to renumber all the rooms. We didn't know what was in there. We didn't know what the spaces were. We didn't know anything. And that was really, really frustrating for me because I felt like it was unnecessary, Nicholas. It's the same people, literally often sitting right next to one another. And for some reason, for decades, have not shared very well, frankly.
Was there one specific thing that Kahua was doing or had that really attracted you?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it goes back to listen, I've been at this for a really long time talking about the value of turnover and handover at the end of a project. I did a lot of roadshow presentations, partnering with Autodesk, but also working for Autodesk, really talking about the value of things like building information modeling for operations and how design and engineering teams can turn that over and get this. And then I worked on Kobe and I understood the value of structured data, but there was something missing. And when I started talking to our president, Brian Moore, I got really excited because I found out about Kahua's platform, and their platform is really, I mean, it truly is the realization of low code, no code, sort of the ability to be able to improve over time, process, and add additional capabilities in a way that I had not seen before. I've seen a lot of companies try to do this, but Kahua had a mature platform and really a very clear vision for where they wanted to take it, especially with AI and rapid development. And talking to Brian, he talked about this magical ability, this methodology that Kua had developed that would really help streamline turnover or handover after a project. As a matter of fact, he talked about it starting as soon as the first time somebody started thinking about assets during design, which was mind-boggling to me because to me it was all about sort of the design and engineering, teams like starting to design things and refine and in spreadsheets adding information about assets that were being selected for a project and then when they got installed and then that would usually fall down, frankly, Nicholas, as you know, and
Yeah.
at the end of the project we would get, if you were lucky, you were going to get a box of folders, binders, CDs, a SharePoint location, something with
Yeah.
unstructured data.
Brian, we talk, I'll represent the capital projects folks, you represent the facility management, asset management folks. I'll represent the project people. And it's not intentional. We don't mean harm. We
Right.
start off a project talking about using phrases like commissioning starts on day one, handover starts on day one, but we don't practice it. We haven't practiced it in my career because we haven't had the tools to do it. And that's what's exciting about what we call asset centric project management, a methodology for collecting that information as it is ideated, as it comes into my head as an idea, as it gets put on paper in a normal business process. That's what I love so much about this methodology is that there's no extra steps. It's a click or two here and there, but there's no new module, there's no new tool for asset centric. It's just built into the tools that we're already using.
Yeah, so I like to think of it as sort of technology enabled methodology. I know that sounds a little bit like a mouthful, but also with process as well. And it was sort of the missing ingredient. In other words, listen, I think building owners, people who pay for these large capital programs have accepted really, I don't want to say standards because that sounds like I'm dinging on project teams and I'm not. I think they just set the bar low in terms of expectations, like what they think they're going to get to operate their facilities. To me, it's a little bit like buying a car and knowing nothing about the car. You don't know the make, model, serial number, when it was built. You don't know how to maintain it. You don't even know what it, you kind of know what it looks like based upon some drawings, but you don't know what it's going to look like until the end. Like that's kind of what buildings are like, right? That's sort of like buying a building without actually knowing anything about it. And so I think the bar has been set really low, Nicholas. And I think
Agree.
it's kind of an industry problem, not a project team problem. It's not a facility operator's problem.
Brian, I want to come back to the details of that problem. I want us to describe that a bit. But first, you and I were last week at as you said, the Global Asset Management Summit sponsored by the Asset Leadership Network.
Yep.
And I left there to go to the Construction Owners Association meeting where I led a day one early morning session on handover. And owners were in the room passing the mic around, talking about their processes. And what was beautiful about what we heard at the ALN summit was these leaders standing up and said, we have accepted the bar being too low. And they talked about that they know they're going to get a thumb drive. You described it earlier as boxes and boxes and reams of paper. And today it's generally on a thumb drive or on a project site somewhere. They're getting digital paper, if you will, a collection of hundreds of thousands of PDFs and spreadsheets. But these people in the room said, we know that what we're getting is an incomplete and frankly, low quality product. But we've accepted that for so long now because all we ever do with it is throw it in the drawer because we know it's not very valuable. And then we pay to have somebody to create a working functional database. It amazed me that their self-awareness that I know that the problem is that this product that the construction team is delivering to me is no good. And I've just accepted it so long now. That is the norm. We accept it, we pay for it, and then we go pay someone to create the database. The fact that they were so comfortable in the knowledge of that bar being set so low really struck me. I wondered if you had the same thought when we were together at the ALN event.
I did. First of all, the last two companies I worked for, Kahua and Johnson Controls, do not allow you to put a USB thumb drive in your laptops. So not only is it going in the drawer, you're actually not allowed to use them anymore. So it's getting even more difficult from that perspective. But really, when I think about why this is successful now, there's a lot of things that led up to this. It just didn't happen because of a good idea. It was a really good idea, but it also got enabled because the methodology and technology is here now. And we are able to actually handle massive amounts of information in a much more, let's say, easy to handle manner, in a structured manner that's usable. I'm not talking about an unstructured PDF that's got 700 pages and you don't know where anything is, but I'm talking about the ability as anybody touches asset information, from the highest person in a project to the lowest person in a project, to someone performing maintenance in a facility, to someone managing a portfolio of facilities. As you touch asset information in your daily life or in your daily flow of work, whether or not you're walking by a piece of equipment, you're walking through a facility, you can actually add information. You get you get a submittal and an email. Guess what? You can just one button. I'm talking one button, Nicholas. If you can't touch one button and attach it to an asset, we'll extract all of that information. We'll help you structure it, and we'll actually give you a score sheet, sort of like a scoreboard,
Mhm.
telling you when you're done. And that's really been a problem for the industry. They've always really, I think, had a difficult time telling where they were in the process. And they sort of like throw their hands up in the air and say, well, is that good enough? Is that close enough? It's all in that box. To it's there. We tried really hard. We really, really tried hard. We think it's all there. Go find it. That's that's kind of the way it was. Right now, literally at your fingertips. I love this story because I talked to a large infrastructure builder recently who's doing a lot of energy projects. They were absolutely blown away by this simple concept. Let's say Bob is an engineer and has been helping build gas turbine plants for 40 years. And a lot of decisions are made during projects that are, the change orders, things get, altered. We've got conditions that need to be kind of on the ground, boots on the ground, have to make decisions. And all of that stuff typically will get logged somewhere. Well, can you imagine, Nicholas, 5 years after Bob retires and someone who's never been in a plant before comes in and sees a condition and they're like, why did they do that? And the ability to be able to just simply ask and get an answer that says, we did that because there was a compliance issue or there wasn't enough space or there wasn't availability. It was during COVID and we had to make some changes. But guess what? It's all logged and it's all part of the asset history, including the first time we thought about that piece of equipment to the time it was installed, to the time it was in operation, and everything in between. We actually have at our fingertips now, and it's really done in a way that's easy. I'm going to say it's the easy button. I hate to say it, but it's easy. It's so easy that it took me about 5 minutes to learn how to do it. And, it's simple.
Well, and that's one of the premises that we operate under, and everyone that we ever talked to agreed with this, that it has to be that easy or it won't get done. It's gotta be easy for the guy, the maintenance worker that's carrying the wrenches around. He's gotta be able to push it with his, as we always say in construction, fat fingers. We're out there on the job site, and we've got big, strong hands, and we've got gloves on them most of the time. So we've gotta be able to do this easily, or it just won't get captured. If it is easy, there's no reason why it shouldn't be captured every time.
Yeah, agreed. And it can be as simple as just putting your tablet over a nameplate and scanning it. AI is going to extract all that data and automatically insert it in the database. If the organization maybe is a little bit more sophisticated and they're using something like barcodes or QR code scanning, same thing, scan it, take a picture of it with your phone and boom, there's like the entire asset history. And you can actually enter information or have AI go ahead and scrape that data from, the photographs that it's
Yeah.
taking, and it automatically inserts it into the database. And we're doing even more sophisticated stuff, Nicholas. I think the asset registry is fantastic, and the accuracy of all of that decision making is incredible. But where it really gets exciting to me is what happens after that information is in. So, for instance, I can tell you this: if I scan a nameplate, and let's say the submittal said it's supposed to be a train air handler, and the nameplate says it's a Siemens. Well, something happened, something went wrong, or a decision got made that someone's not aware of. We're installing things that may not meet the requirements of the contract. So that's one little piece of it. And when we start talking about downstream, like understanding the total cost, that's the brass ring of asset management, total cost of ownership of the life cycle of an asset from the time we think about it until the time we dispose of it. We know exactly what it cost us and exactly how efficient it was. How did it operate? How much did we spend on it? And was it moved from one location to another? What were the change conditions that happened during its life? And where did we dispose of it? Did it have hazardous materials in it? What did we get? Where do we do with that? So it's everything from understanding that. And you could say that it's a compliance and accounting issue, but also think about it feeding your capital planning process. When you've got the ability to be able to do a facility condition assessment on extremely accurate, robust asset information and understand really as you calculate your facility condition index and all of that moves into your capital planning and you really know what you need to replace and you actually budget for it, then you start to do things that are magical, like actually renew buildings. And renewal is another thing like total cost of ownership. If I perform all of the maintenance and I do all of the right things on a building, theoretically, it's going to last forever. It's certainly going to last longer than you and me.
Yeah.
And I think we accept building or facility, and it could be infrastructure, it could be linear assets, degradation. I think we accept that the way we accept poor handovers. It's not necessary if we did a better job of the life cycle management of our assets. And the data and the methodology is what's going to guarantee that success.
Beautiful. I want to go back. You just mentioned it again, the problem with handover. We understand there's a problem. We've not been able to collect the information. And as a project person, I know that the end of project scramble is when we collect asset information. It's the last 3 or 4 or 5 months of a project, and we didn't collect it as we created it. So we have this mad scramble to deliver to our owner, something that should be usable to them as best we can. We call subcontractors back on site. They might not have been there for months and months. We ask, in 100 emails, we ask for information and we gather it all together and we throw it in whatever that media is, whether it's the thumb drive or the Dropbox site, however they want to deliver that. It's a problem for project people because it takes a lot of our time and energy to actually put that thing together. We know we're delivering a poor product. We also know that because the product's poor, you're going to call us for years as the owner looking for information because what we gave you was hard to look through or hard to find, or you just didn't get it. One of our clients recently actually audited the thumb drive and found that they only received 40% of what their contractual obligation should have delivered.
I'm surprised they got that much. It was probably a huge job just to figure out what the 40% was by digging through that PDF. And we call that the project after the project. It's the 2 to
Yes.
4% of the capital project cost that you spend again getting the information that you were contractually obligated to get during
That's
project.
exactly that's exactly where I wanted to take you. So it's a problem for us on the project side. We know we're not delivering a good product. We want to do better. We don't have a haven't had a tool to do that with. But describe just for a moment, what is that problem on the owner side, that project after the project, that 2 to 4%, and kind of what's the impact of that to an owner? Why should
Yeah,
people care?
I can give you real world examples. I worked with a university a handful of years ago that did a very large capital program across their project or across their campus, and they had done a couple of new base building design and construction projects. So they built a new dormitory and did some other projects. They spent the next 2 years walking the campus and gathering data with a small army of students and facility staff to populate the database. So they were essentially running those brand new facilities blind for a couple of years until they finally got what they wanted. The other example that I heard recently was this was another large portfolio owner. They had built a new facility and they just said, we know we're not going to get what we asked for. So we hired a third party to come in 3 times during the construction to document what we're getting. I was burst out laughing because I'm like, well, hold on. You're paying these people for that information, but they're not going to give it to you. So you're paying someone else for the information.
I
Who's
can
got that
top
kind
that
of
one,
money right
Brian.
now?
I can top that story in that when I was still in my design career, we were paid to design a building for a pharmaceutical, actually in your home state, North Carolina. We designed and helped construction administration for an office building, office and research building for a pharmaceutical. And immediately after design was done, we began doing the audit of asset information once the building opened. We got paid to go in and create the database of the information that we should have delivered as designers, and certainly the construction team should have delivered it. But so it's an expensive problem, is what you're saying. Owners have to build that database after the project's delivered. Is that the normal scenario?
Well, the way I see it now, Nicholas, cat's out of the bag because we've shown time and time again that asset centric project management is really, really powerful and has completely flipped everything on its head because no more excuses. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, we're not talking about something that's requires extra effort or you to get additional team members. It's just simply about having an opportunity as that information comes across your desk or across your phone or across the call to just enter it, attach it, and it builds. And it actually tells you, it gives you kind of a real time scorecard. If I want 10 pieces of information about a system in my facility, guess what? When I get 10, it turns green. I know it's ready for turnover. You know, we build these packages, we check the level of accuracy, but we also check the level of completeness. And when it's ready to roll, you hit it once again, one button, turnover, handover, whatever you want to call it. It just goes. And it goes not just as a structured data format, but it can also go downstream to your CMMS instantly, like Maximo or any of the other really big ones. It could go to Esri. It could go to all of your downstream enterprise asset management solutions, your CMMS solutions, your IWMS solutions. It just goes. And so here's the interesting thing, Nicholas. Those people who are responsible for, operating those facilities, they have to reproduce all of that. It's not just about gathering it, but often they don't know what they need to maintain until it breaks. And then they go and they stand in front of it and they look up information and they try to figure out, and they'll open up a product like Maximo and they'll sort of enter it in there.
Yeah.
That should have been done long, long before this problem reared its ugly head. And frankly, we've got the easy way to do it, right? It's literally turnover package or instantly send it. We've got both. We could send it live bidirectionally into those solutions, or we could ship it over however they want it.
So there's a problem that's existed for decades. It has been solved with this asset-centric methodology. No reason why an owner shouldn't adopt it now. You've already mentioned owners in the energy space that are using it. We've mentioned healthcare. We've mentioned education. Are there any niches or industries that would not work for?
That's a really good question. I think anybody who's got an asset lifecycle view. You and I spent a lot of time with the DC government last week. Talk about impressive organization, the way they manage their assets. They've got a very powerful, unique life cycle view of their assets. And their assets include, fire trucks, all kinds of service vehicles, infrastructure, pipes under the street, schools, all of that stuff. Anybody who's got an interest in a life cycle view of their facilities and really want to understand what it costs to maintain. I guess you could say really simple facilities, maybe that are kind of a commodity, which I can't really think of. I mean, capital building is expensive, Nicholas, and
Yeah.
throwing away that investment seems like a shame to me. So I can't really think of anybody who wouldn't need it. I just can't.
And it does seem that the more complex the asset inventory is, the greater the need is. But we started this process when we started rolling out asset centric. So among our first customers were K-12 schools. An
Yeah,
elementary school is not a really complicated building,
not.
or so we thought. More complicated than we thought. Everybody has some of the same building systems, electrical and mechanical, plumbing, HVAC, fire protection. One of the things that we didn't consider that is kind of a new age thing, security systems and IT systems are now becoming critical building systems, not just something that I throw on top of a desk. So I think probably the more important or the more dense, the more complicated your assets are, this is more important. But on the other side, the simpler your building is, probably the less likely you have the bandwidth to go create that asset information after.
Yeah, bandwidth, but also think about it. I don't know of any school district in the country that's got more money than they need, right? That's just not going to happen. And they need those facilities in in almost every case. Taxpayers pay for the upkeep and construction of those facilities, and they want to maximize their investment. There's pressure to make these schools last longer, but also still, every parent wants the school to be perfect for their kid, right? So there's a lot of pressure from all sides. Taxpayer, there's the parent. Those facilities need to be up and running all the time. And as we continue to build out the sophistication of asset centric project management, Nicholas, we're adding stuff at a rate that is kind of really unheard of in the industry. It's something I'm incredibly proud of in just the handful of months that I've been here.
All right, I'm going to
We're
come back
adding
to
right
you.
now.
I want to come
Go
back
ahead.
to you about that, Brian. But first, I want to back up and ask. I'm a fellow pioneer with you.
Yep.
We've both been at this for a long time, and my pioneering started on the BIM side, on the design side. But I remember BIM when BIM was a baby, when the B
Yep.
stood for baby. Even at that point, though, I felt like we already had good facility management applications. They were desktop, client server tools, but I felt like asset management and facility management was ahead of design management at that point. How can we have gone so long, decades, without solving these problems that asset centric is addressing? And on the other piece, why hasn't BIM fulfilled the promises that we thought it would in the 90s, that asset managers believed it would fulfill? Why do you think that maturity hasn't come faster? And how come BIM hasn't been a bigger part of the asset management solution?
Yeah, interesting. Do you have like 15 or 20 hours for us to talk about this and probably debate it?
No, we need the Cliff Notes version.
On one side, on one side of the equation, you've got design and construction teams who are often only there during the design and construction of a facility. And then they move on because they get paid that
But we
way,
do.
right? The service industry, and they get paid to design and deliver. The owner, on the other hand, has that building on average in the United States for at least 25 years or more. We've got facilities that are hundreds of years old now, and I had clients in the UK who were maintaining facilities that were 1,000 years old. Seriously, I'm not kidding. 1,000-year-old education institution buildings that had been updated, of course, a billion times, but they were still that old. And so I think the maturity of the solutions really came down to that. It was probably easier for an owner to purchase and implement an enterprise, let's say CMMS or enterprise asset management or IWMS solution, and make that investment because they had the long view, right? They were putting data into a system and they were operating and doing those facilities. So that's just a little bit of a theory. I think the slow moving was because software development companies were struggling with identifying the value for those project teams. Well, that's all been figured out now. We've got a beautiful PMIS solution in Kahua that has streamlined and, from an owner's perspective, the whole project delivery capability, and from a platform perspective, from cost to everything, decisions, everything that needs to go into that. And then we've got it. BIM, on the other hand, really got, I think, confused because people started thinking of a BIM model as a data repository. And, for I could tell you for a long, long time, I would have someone call me up and say, I've got a 1 terabyte BIM. It takes 25 minutes to open. I can't get anything out of it. It's got data in there I don't understand. It's got pipe hangers. It's got ductwork. I just need the spaces and I need the equipment that I need to maintain. So there was this weird misunderstanding between like what an engineer thought an owner needed or what an architect thought an owner needed or what a contractor thought an owner needed. So they just kind of tossed this thing over. Then it was supposed to be up to the owner to extract a usable BIM. Well, guess what? There's not a lot of owners that have BIM expertise on staff. And navigating a 3D model is not what facility teams do. So I can remember, Nicholas, 10-15 years ago, all of the vendors who were producing these BIM-based facilities. I remember this vendor giving a demo on he's like, all right, so when the maintenance technician comes into the room in the hospital and there's water pouring out of the overhead, all he has to do is pull out his tablet and then they start showing navigating through a model and pinching and zooming and then you run into a ductwork or you run into a steel beam and then magically they're like, oh, hold on, let me turn the ceiling on, let me make it transparent so I can see the pipes above the overhead. Oh, there's the shutoff. Like, who's going to do that, Nicholas? Nobody is going to do that. So the translation from that beautiful vision to boots on the ground was it was an unbelievable disaster, frankly. And it never really took off when the industry started taking that in bite-sized chunks and passing it over and doing things such as operation-specific models. Then it got a little bit better. But honestly, I hate to tell you, most building owners are still flipping to a 2D floor plan view to figure out where things are. This is what
And
they're doing.
I've come to appreciate the value of photogrammetry and reality capture.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, and I listen a lot to Stephen DeVito at Procon Consulting and
Yep.
some other industry experts, and I've come to believe that photogrammetry is going to become a lot more important to the building owner operator than a BIM model ever was going to be. But that's something that we'll see
Well,
going forward.
photogrammetry is interesting because it looks real, right? It's a photo and it looks like a photo, but it's really gazillion dots. You can measure off of it. You can do a lot of things. You can identify assets. So it's kind of taking a photo and making it data rich, which is really interesting.
Yeah, they generally refer to it as reality capture. It's
Yeah.
what's really out there.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk a bit about what Kahua is doing on the other side. We've started creating tools that are not for capital projects. Maybe that's your influence in our company, Brian. We've started moving to your side. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I think about what we've done, it's groundbreaking. I like to think of it as the bridge between construction and operations, but the truth is, I think that's underselling its value. It sort of unifies it. It kind of makes it one thing. So we think about an asset from beginning to end. Well, when a project's completed and information gets turned over, 1,000 other things happen. I did this diagram. It's kind of to try to explain to my team at Kahua what happens to an asset after it gets turned over, because there's a lot of things, right? There's a lot of different areas that we could go into, maintenance and the ability to be able to understand things like asset lifecycle cost, depreciating assets so we know, when they're not worth maintaining anymore, safety and compliance, understanding what we have, does it meet code? Does it meet compliance requirements? Am I keeping my occupants safe? Am I providing a healthier environment for patients? Am I keeping faculty, staff, and students at university more engaged due to better management and better light, better access to air? Like all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
All of this stuff happens. So some of the things that we're working on, you and I were talking earlier about critical asset environments. Some of the things that we're doing right now that you're going to see very soon, and we're actually already showing them, are things like components of an asset. So I can take a really large asset, maybe it's a generator, maybe it's a turbine or something like that. Inside of that are a lot of things. There's spans, there's belts, there's parts, there's motors, all of that kind of stuff. So now we can take an asset, break it down into all of its components. The other thing we're working on right now, which I'm really excited about, because this is when it gets really, really cool and very powerful: upstream, downstream dependencies. What if I lose a piece of equipment? what's the effect? I can see that. I can gamify it. I can say, what if I lose this? How am I going to recover? Do I have redundancy? Do I have redundant power? Do I have the ability to be able to reroute water? You're going to be able to do that with what we have because we're going to be showing the ability to be able to do upstream, downstream dependencies. Also, one of the biggest things that often gets missed during asset turnover is parts, spare parts to meet maintenance requirements. If I'm doing a monthly and inspect of filters in an air handling system, especially in a really critical environment like healthcare, and it's absolutely necessary to make sure that my air filtration system is not harming patients. What if I knew that I had all of those spares and all of those parts on hand and I got them during the process of constructing and now I'm managing them. So parts is something that we're looking at. Compliance, so data compliance. So putting data in. Is it the data I was expecting? Is it the data that I required? And getting notified literally via a message, an email, or who knows, maybe even a text message saying, guess what? Something just got installed in your building that's wrong. And right now, you don't know 2 years after operation, the minute someone scans it. AI is
Yeah.
providing to us. So there's a lot of things that are coming, a lot of really exciting things, maintenance procedures. That's another one. So people think that asset like warranties start the day that you turn the keys over to the building owner. That's wrong. It starts the day someone installs it and the day someone turns it on. And that may be months before a facility's in operations, especially for big facilities. If you're not performing that maintenance from day one, you're voiding your warranty. You're voiding potentially a 10 million or more capital piece of asset, right? By destroying it or destroying its warranty before you ever even know you had it. Talk about crazy. It'd be like, I'm going to go back to the car example. It's like the dealer selling you a new truck and the dealer saying, I'm sorry, this brand new truck is already out of warranty because we forgot to replace something. Live with
The
it.
day that you received it.
You wouldn't be happy, would you?
Yeah. Not at all.
Right.
Well, Brian, those are some really cool things, it sounds like, that are on the near horizon. Talk to me about the things that we've already put in place on what I would call the operator side. I know that one of our clients came to us and asked for a work order tool because they
Mhm.
often actually use their own staff to do capital project, or they use capital project dollars to fund some things that we would consider maintenance and operations. So we created a work order tool. That's not a capital projects thing. We did that as a request to a client, and it seems
Right.
to have been very popular. I know that we created tools for condition assessments, and talk to me about how that works and how that leads to the next round of capital projects, which is really where we've grown up.
Yeah, so the facility condition assessment product was also built by a partner of ours, and which is really great about the Kahua platform because like I said earlier, it's a true low code, no code development environment, and we can have partners, create things that weren't necessarily on our roadmap and get them into the product and into the hands of our customers really quickly, taking the
And
data that's already in Kahua and serving it up to them.
and Brian, bring in expertise that we don't have.
Right.
We can't hire all the smart people, and there's a lot of other things that our clients need to have done. So let's let people that have that expertise create these tools.
Yeah, and also accelerates our roadmap, Nicholas, because there's things that we want to do that our clients want us to do. And frankly, we've needed additional expertise or maybe additional development staff or whatever it may be. And we've had really, really great partners who've enabled us to be able to do that. So around facility condition assessment, our ability to be able to do things like scenario planning, our ability to be able to do specific cost control, our ability to be able to do, you said maintenance. This is interesting because sometimes you need a gap maintenance solution. And what I mean by that is as assets come online and you need to maintain them to ensure your warranties, the owner may not be, providing access to their work order management system until the building's complete. So sometimes there's a gap need and we fill that gap need with a partner developed solution, which is meeting a lot of person's needs. And we continue to be able to look at the industry that way. It's all about what our clients need, Nicholas. I mean, frankly, it's I think one of the problems with a lot of software companies in the past when they were using traditional development methodologies was there was only like so much bandwidth that you had in your development organization, the ability to be able to produce so much, and a lot of really good ideas and a lot of really good stuff that our clients could need were kind of like right here, like right below the bandwidth, and so that stuff in traditional environments got ignored and the clients never got that value. Well, Kahua's got that platform, which essentially allows us to do this, right? So brings that up and puts it into our depth, our depth gauge. Like we're able to operate in here now because we've got these phenomenal partners who are essentially, they're a force multiplier for us that are enabling us to do things and get them into our roadmap. And, AI is changing all of that as well because it's increasing everybody's ability to be able to deliver greater capability. So we've got partners, and then we've got our own methodology, which is accelerating. Which I got to tell you, it's a little bit like I don't know, like dog years, right? So I've been at Kahua for 4 months, and I've seen 2 years worth of work being done or more. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding you, by the best teams I've ever worked with, frankly.
It's amazing, and our emphasis on implementing AI, if that's the right way to say it, has paid off in spades. You're right. This May release that we'll have, May of 26 when I'm recording this, is probably the most impactful release we've ever had, and it's because AI now is part of our process for creating code. All right, so Brian, we've used our ecosystem of partners, of industry experts that know more than we know, to create things like facility condition assessments in this asset-centric kind of bandwidth, this asset-centric overlay. So now I can go out to all my other facilities in my portfolio, collect that asset information that I need for proper portfolio management. You mentioned that we have scenario planning tools, which lets me decide how I'm going to spend money based on priorities, which that facility condition assessment gives me information on. Master planning. If we have master planning tools, well, I know that master plans are what leads to the next round of capital funding, which again brings it back to the life cycle where Kahua really fits in its capital projects. So we've got these tools on the facility management, on the asset management side, that will lead us to more capital projects. That's really exciting. It's really round trips. At one of the conferences I was at last week, we talked about retiring assets, and someone used the term from lust to dust.
Yes,
From
I
the
was
first
there.
time that you want an asset until the time that you retired. And I argued that it really should be lust to dust to lust, or maybe lust to lust, because an asset almost always, when it's retired, is replaced, which is, again, just the next capital project or the next operational initiative project. So we've done this life cycle. It's beautiful. It is truly working now across the facility life cycle, across the asset life cycle. So just maybe this will be my last question for you today. What's next? What will the Kahua platform one day support that we don't know about today? Will we one day be an enterprise asset management tool? Too much to expect, or you're in charge of this methodology at
Yeah.
Kahua? What's the next thing that we should expect?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or if it's something entirely new. There's probably not an acronym for it that's been developed yet, but it's bigger than an enterprise asset management solution.
So we should
I'm going to say,
should
I'm
pay
going to boldly
attention.
say we could be there in no time, frankly, with the plans that we have. It's really exciting. But the truth is, I want to be the enterprise asset management system, not a enterprise asset management system. So, we certainly don't lack enthusiasm and goals and confidence. We feel really confident in what we're working on. Like I was saying earlier, the best team I've ever worked with, and people who are willing to do it and get it done in really amazing ways, and that just energizes me every single day. I can tell you, I mean, honestly, like Nicholas, we're almost able to build stuff as fast as I'm thinking about it, which is amazing because we've been going from ideation. I come from the world of product requirements documents. You write 40, 50 page and, and they're saying, listen, bring it down a notch, man. We only need, that's great that you think about it that way and you get all of that down. But you know what? Let's just go. Let's just start and iterate and iterate and iterate, which is amazing. So we've been able to produce at a rate that's unprecedented in my world anyway. So I thought about these ideas when I started with Brian and,
Brian
we had
Moore, our
really great
president.
conversations. I'm like, Brian, if I had 5 years, we could do some great stuff. He's like, let me show you. Let me show you what we have, and let's see if you can do that 5 years in one. And I was like, whatever, okay. But now I'm like, hold on, I think we could do that 5 years in 6 months. It's crazy and a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
All right. So the answer is stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right, then I will give you one. This will be the final question.
Okay.
And I'll just ask, if you're speaking to a group of folks that are using PMIS systems like Kahua, or potentially going to procure a PMIS system like Kahua, what would your one piece of advice be?
Yeah, play the long game. Your facilities last a lot longer than the most current project. The second, well, I'm going to add a second piece of advice. This is not a phase 2 or phase 3 thing. This is a phase 1. As soon as I start thinking about a new facility, you should be thinking about the life cycle of everything that you're thinking about. And so you don't start this process during commissioning. You don't start this process after the building's open. You start it as you're planning it. And frankly, you should be collecting information about your assets and your facilities then. It needs to scale to your portfolio. There's not very many building owners and operators that we work with, Nicholas, that have one facility. They have 10, a dozen, 100,000, 10,000. And this needs to scale, and you need to have the long vision for the life cycle of your facilities.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm Chief Evangelist at Kahua, and I am grateful to have this time with Brian Haynes today. Brian, thanks for the time. Thanks for the great information. We'll talk to you again soon.
Always fun, Nicholas. Thank you.